It was a cold, grey morning in the bustling heart of New York City. A long black limousine pulled up near the helipad of West Point Aviation Headquarters, the home of one of the most successful private aviation companies in the world. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, and employees whispered as the door opened and out stepped Victoria Chase, the sharp, confident, and fiercely ambitious CEO of West Point. She was known for her arrogance as much as she was known for her brilliance. To her, the world was a game of power, and she was always the winner. But fate had other plans that day. Just a few feet away from the grand entrance of the helipad, under a broken piece of canvas that barely shielded him from the wind, sat a tall, bearded man in a worn-out brown jacket. His hair was tangled, his hands cracked from years of hardship, and his eyes carried the weight of a story untold. His name was Malcolm Reed. Most people passed him without a glance, but there was something different about him, something silent yet commanding. He was no ordinary homeless man. That morning, Victoria had arrived, with her entire board of directors, to reveal their company's newest pride, a multi-million-dollar helicopter designed to rival even military-grade choppers. It was sleek, black, and beautiful. She had invited pilots from across the state to test it out for a live demo, but none had succeeded so far. "No one can fly this beast," she boasted with a smirk. "It takes a special kind of genius to handle her, and I doubt anyone here can." Her team laughed nervously, knowing how ruthless she could be. Just then, her gentle but firm voice cut through the noise. "I can fly it." Heads turned. There he was, Malcolm, standing slowly, his shadow cast long and proud against the rising sun. The crowd burst into laughter. "Who let the homeless man speak?" one of the executives mocked. Victoria crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow. "You?" she said coldly. "You can't even afford a roof, and you think you can fly my helicopter?" Malcolm didn't flinch. His voice remained steady. "I can fly anything with wings or rotors," he replied. For a brief second, something flickered in Victoria's eyes, maybe curiosity, maybe disbelief. Then she laughed, a cruel, sharp sound that echoed in the air. "All right then, Mr. Sky King, fly this chopper, and I'll marry you." The crowd erupted with laughter, some clapping mockingly, but Malcolm didn't smile. He simply nodded. "Deal." Suddenly the energy shifted. It was no longer a joke. He stepped forward slowly, his calm confidence unsettling everyone. Victoria, amused but intrigued, signaled her security not to stop him. "Fine," she said. "Show us what a miracle looks like." As Malcolm climbed into the cockpit, his rough hands moved like they had been there 1,000 times before. The switches, the panels, the controls, it all came back to him as if it was etched into his soul. Unbeknownst to everyone, Malcolm Reed had once been one of the most skilled helicopter pilots in the U.S. Special Operations Aviation Regiment. A war hero, a legend. But life had torn everything from him, his family, his home, his pride. Yet the sky had never abandoned him. He whispered softly to the chopper, "Let's dance again." Then he ignited the engine. A roar filled the air, powerful and smooth. The blades sliced through the wind like a beast awakening. People gasped. Even Victoria's smirk began to fade. Malcolm lifted the helicopter into the air with a control so precise that the test pilots who had failed earlier could only stare in awe. He spun it gracefully in a 360-degree hover, executed a perfect vertical climb, and performed a daring zero-drift landing that even the best pilots rarely attempted. Every move told a story of experience, mastery, and courage. When he finally brought the helicopter back down, the world seemed to hold its breath. He stepped out, brushed the dust off his jacket, and looked directly at Victoria. "Told you," he said quietly. No arrogance, no anger, just quiet truth. The board members were stunned. The reporters were speechless. Victoria's eyes widened, not just in shock, but in something she hadn't felt in a long time. Respect. But pride was a stubborn thing. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Someone you just promised to marry," he said with a hint of a smile. The crowd burst into gasps and murmurs. She froze. She had made a promise she thought no one could ever claim. But now she was face to face with a man who had just done the impossible. And deep inside, she knew this wasn't just a homeless man. This was someone who carried a storm in silence. That night, as the city lights burned bright and news channels replayed Malcolm's incredible flight, people began to dig. Who was this mysterious man? Why had someone with such skill ended up on the streets? And why did Victoria Chase, the untouchable CEO, look shaken for the first time in her life? Malcolm sat alone by the docks, watching the water. He wasn't after her money or her name. He wasn't even after revenge. But this moment, this was the beginning of something bigger than either of them could imagine. His past was about to resurface, and it was far more powerful than anyone knew. The night after Malcolm Reed's breathtaking flight, the world had already begun to whisper his name. The video of the homeless man who flew the impossible chopper had gone viral across news channels, aviation forums, and social media platforms. People from all walks of life were trying to uncover who he really was. But while the world buzzed, Malcolm sat silently on a park bench overlooking the city lights, the weight of his past pressing heavy on his chest. He had not touched a helicopter since the day everything in his life fell apart. Once he had been a hero, a decorated pilot for the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, known as the Night Stalkers. He had flown critical missions where lives depended on him, leading rescue operations under enemy fire, taking risks no one else dared to take. But war was not kind. On a mission that went horribly wrong, he lost not only his brothers in arms, but also the woman he loved, his wife. Eliza, a fire, a betrayal from those he trusted, and a broken system left him with nothing but a few medals in a box and memories too painful to carry. Rather than chase glory, he walked away from the world, and the world forgot him. Meanwhile, Victoria Chase sat in her office, staring at his file on her screen. Her security team had pulled everything. Malcolm Reed, 47 years old, former Special Ops pilot, awarded multiple medals of honor. Last seen publicly a decade ago. No criminal record, no family left, a ghost. She felt a strange chill crawl down her spine. She had mocked him without knowing the mountain of pain and strength behind those tired eyes. For the first time in years, her arrogance felt small. The next morning, she summoned him to her office at West Point Aviation. He entered not like a beggar, but like a man who had already faced the worst the world could give him and walked through it alive. She asked, "Why did someone like you end up on the streets?" He didn't look at her with bitterness, just quiet truth. "Because sometimes life doesn't break the weak," he said softly. "It breaks the strong to remind them they were human all along." Her breath caught. This man carried the kind of strength no money could buy, no title could match. Over the next few days, Victoria found herself watching him more closely. Malcolm was offered a job at West Point, but not just as any pilot. He was soon training the company's best aviators, teaching them precision, discipline, and fearlessness. His natural leadership began to inspire not just pilots, but everyone around him. The same people who once laughed at him now stood at attention when he entered the hangar. The man who once slept under broken canvas now commanded respect without saying a word. But with that respect came a storm Victoria didn't expect. A rival company, Falcon Dynamics, who had tried and failed to replicate West Point's helicopter, saw Malcolm as a threat. They discovered his past mission files, including the one where a top-secret rescue operation had gone wrong, and the cover-up that followed. It turned out Victoria's late father, the founder of West Point Aviation, had been indirectly involved in the supply chain of that mission. The same mission that cost Malcolm everything. And now the truth was about to explode like a grenade in their lives. One evening, as Malcolm prepared for a high-level flight demo in front of military investors, the CEO of Falcon Dynamics arrived with documents. He publicly revealed the classified mission report, exposing how West Point's fuel supply had malfunctioned, leading to the death of his crew and his wife's last hope of rescue. The crowd gasped. Malcolm froze, not in fear but in the weight of a wound reopening. All eyes turned to Victoria. She had no idea about her father's involvement. But she saw something in Malcolm's face that pierced. Through the layers of business, ego, and pride, pain, real pain. In that moment, she did something no one expected. She walked straight to him and said softly but firmly, "I will not let my father's sins bury you any deeper. I'm standing with you." The board protested. The investors whispered, but Victoria stood tall. Something in her had changed since that morning on the helipad. The scandal threatened to ruin everything. But Malcolm, for the first time in years, decided to stop running from his past. He stepped up to the press, told the world the truth, not with anger, but with courage. He explained how he lost everything, not because he was weak, but because he carried the weight of saving others. His words struck a nerve around the globe. Veterans groups rallied behind him. Aviation communities honored him. And investors, rather than pulling away, saw the soul of a company that was willing to face its shadows and rise again. West Point Aviation's reputation soared higher than before, not because of wealth, but because of integrity. And Victoria, the woman who once mocked a homeless man, now stood beside him not as a CEO above him, but as a woman who admired him. One evening, after a long day of training new pilots, she found Malcolm standing alone on the helipad, looking at the sunset. "You could have destroyed me," she said. "Why didn't you?" He turned to her slowly, a calm smile on his face. "Because broken doesn't always mean bitter," he said. "Sometimes broken just means rebuilding differently." She stepped closer, her heart pounding in a way it never had before. For the first time in her life, she wasn't looking at power, money, or image. She was looking at a man who had nothing yet had everything that truly mattered. The promise she had made that day, in mockery and arrogance. "Fly this chopper and I'll marry you," echoed in both their minds. But this time it wasn't a joke. She whispered, "That promise." "It wasn't fair," Malcolm chuckled softly. "Neither was life." But then, to everyone's surprise, she said, "I want to make it real. The world may have seen a homeless man flying a helicopter, but..." Victoria saw the man who had taught her what real strength meant. Months later, on that same helipad where it all began, surrounded by pilots, veterans, and people who believed in second chances, Malcolm and Victoria stood hand in hand, not as CEO and homeless man, but as two souls who had found redemption in each other.